Okay, cool. So thank you for joining us for our Time to Restore quarterly call. I think all of you know me, but I'm Erin Postmus. I'm the Partnerships and Projects Manager for the USA National Phenology Network. And we'll go around and do some introductions of everybody. And I welcome you to share anything that you'd like to about ongoing activities, either related to this project, if you have anything like going on in terms of data collection or workshops or anything like that, or anything else you want to share related to pollinator restoration or anything you think this group might want to know about. I did just want to mention really briefly, and we'll get more into some of these items, I think, but in terms of what we've been working on here at the National Phenology Network for this project, really trying to focus on data collection this year and trying to get some more local phenology programs and backyard observer kind of independent data collectors set up. So we've been focused on that and supporting our state coordinators in doing that. We're also really lucky to bring on David Gwynn, who's joining us today. He's our new Texas coordinator for the project. So I'll pass it to you next, David, to introduce yourself in a minute. But we're really fortunate to have David with us. He has a really wonderful network of people all across Texas. He's been involved with Master Naturalists and the Native Plant Society, Audubon, and a lot of other organizations in many different parts of Texas. So he has some great ideas about ways we can do outreach, and we're already hitting the ground running with a bunch of ideas for this year. We're also making plans to start tackling our herbaria records, which is part of the year 2 of this project. We're going to be working closely with the Botanical Research Institute of Texas in getting access to their TORCH platform. That's the Texas-Oklahoma Consortium of Herbaria. And we're going to be bringing on a couple students here at the U of A to do that scoring of herbarium data this fall. We also are really fortunate to have a contractor working with us, Erin Zylstra. She's a quantitative ecologist with Tucson Audubon, but she brings a lot of really great data analysis skills, and she's done some work for us in the past looking at our flowering data. So she's actually going to be diving into the Time to Restore data this summer and working to make some improvements to that whole workflow and all of the calendars that we've had. So I'm looking forward to sharing what she comes up with maybe later this summer or this fall, and planning on having some larger workshops to get some feedback on that kind of stuff so we can make improvements to those info sheets and the story map that we're going to be producing at the end of phase 2. I think that's it for me in terms of general update. So I will pass it to David if you want to say anything else about yourself and just general introductions and that kind of thing.
Thank you very much, Erin. I'm glad to be here, brand new to the effort. Looking forward to building a relationship with each of y'all. I'm actually located in the Houston area, but was most recently in North Texas in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and then before that in San Antonio. So I've been around the state, now in the Gulf Coast and in Houston, and looking forward to seeing what we can do together to make this project a real success. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gina.
Hey y'all, my name is Gina Lloyd. I'm the Louisiana State Coordinator and super excited to see such a good crowd out here today, many of whom I have already met in previous quarterly calls. We've got a lot going on in the greater New Orleans area right now, keeping up with all the spring phenophase changes, and trying to get photos and videos for teaching and reference materials that we're going to be developing for Time to Restore this year and going forward. I guess that's it for me right now. You want to go to Jane?
Hello, I think I know most of you, but so I'm Jane Breckenridge, and I'm one of the Oklahoma State coordinators and also director of Tribal Alliance for Pollinators. And we work with tribes in Oklahoma and throughout North America on native plant restoration and grassland restoration. And so I've been with this project, I think, since the very beginning, haven't I, Erin? I think I was one of the original. You
were one of the people that inspired it.
Oh, okay.
Before it even started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I've loved being a part of this project. I love the work they're doing, and you know, our biggest challenge is just getting people excited about Nature's Notebook. But Erin knows this because I complain about it every time I talk to her. But except for that, people are you know, coming on board and really interested in how this can help guide us as we do native plant restoration. Updates, we've got a new data collection site for the Noble Public Library in Oklahoma. They're excited about it. Some other interest from some other partners coming on beyond the tribal sphere. We're planning on having one of our summer interns help with data collection this summer, so hoping to do a better job on that for us. We're also looking in at providing the species that are we're monitoring through our native plants that we provide to tribes, is trying to help make that easier for them to create data monitoring sites in case they don't have those. So we're looking at being able to do that to try and increase the number of long-term data collection sites. And next week we've got a TAP conference about climate resilience, and I'm going to make sure to have a little segment on a plug to try and get more people on board to be data collection sites for it as well. So that's what we're doing. And grateful to be a part of it. And thank you, Erin, and everybody else who's been on this, because it's been a wonderful project to work on. So thank you.
We're glad that you're part of it. Do you want to go to Kim next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Eichhorst. I'm the coordinator for New Mexico, but also the director for Bosque Ecosystem Monitoring Program. And we have a slightly different species list than what most states have, because we're focused really on the Rio Grande riparian zone. But we're expanding some of our phenology sites, and we have now funding for an in-person listening session with some of our Pueblo partners and hopefully some new Pueblo partners. And I have an offer from Sharon Howsam from South Central Cast to really help structure that listening session so that it is done correctly. So, and with that, welcome, David and Rob.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Rob Kroll. I'm the Climate Change Program Coordinator for the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission. I'm coming to you from our office in Odana, Wisconsin, which is about as far north as you can get before you fall into Lake Superior. Spring is finally kicking in here. We have a long-term plant phenology project we've been working on since 2014 or so, and things are finally starting to happen out there in the woods. Some of our spring ephemerals are coming up and the trees are starting to pop, and it's cool. And I wish I could spend more time in the woods and less time in the office. Involved with this project for a couple of years, primarily brought on to help think about tribal data sovereignty. And then they keep asking me to come back. So happy to be part of it. This is, you know, I wish that we could have done a kind of multi-cask project with this, but the Midwest wasn't quite ready when we had that meeting. So I'm happy to help out informally. And I'll pass it to Yvette.
All right. I know some of you, I'm pretty new to this. I stepped in, I think, when April took a new job. So this is my second call, I believe, maybe third, I think second. But yeah, I met Rob a few years ago when I attended one of the TAM workshops up in Minnesota. And so we touched base again in Sulphur a couple of years ago at the culturally significant plants training. And I've known Jane for a few years. I remember when TAP and Uchi Butterfly Farm first started out. So I'm Muskogee, and I work remotely from Tulsa. So I'm based out of Tulsa, but our offices are in Norman, Oklahoma, and the University of Oklahoma. So wouldn't say I'm a plant person. I'm just always kind of out on the fringes of it. So I'm just learning a lot. I'll learn from you guys. So let me pass it on to who has not gone. Is it Chelsea? I don't know if I pronounced your name right.
You got it right. Yeah. I'm Chelsea Shaver. My camera doesn't work. Sorry. I'm the owner of Chickadee Natives, which is a New Orleans-based native plant nursery that focuses on the local ecotypes of Southeast Louisiana. Haven't been too involved yet, but now that the busiest part of my spring season is over, I made it through April. I'm really looking forward to just being more involved in the project.
Welcome. Glad you're joining us. I think Karen, maybe next. We can't hear you. I think you're muted.
That's right. Sorry. I ran in and tried to get this going on my phone. So here I am. I'm Karen D'Angelo. I'm one of the master naturalists in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So I'm right up the road from some of these other gals, and I'm involved with the Wild Ones, the local chapter. I'm very interested in plants and butterflies. I'm more of a butterfly attractor than a grower. So I'm trying to attract as many as I can, protect them. So, and try not to get too heartbroken when the mosquito trucks drive through here, which they do all the time. So Louisiana is known for its mosquitoes, and we have to respect the fact that not everybody loves those little insects. So it's just kind of scary to think what else they're, harming. So anyway, this is my first time. I had a card because we did have a speaker at our Master Naturalist group a few months back from LSU, I believe. Trying to think of her name, but anyway, she had given us each the postcard with the plants on them. So I ran across that the other day and just in time to log on. So thanks for letting me join you today.
That was me. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. What's your name?
Gina Lloyd.
Gina, I thought it was you. Okay, well, good, Gina. Thanks for reintroducing yourself.
Well, I'm
it
so
was a
happy
good
to
talk.
be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to
Thank
see
you.
so much representation from Louisiana. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Teresa, do you want to go next? Enter there. We also have, I think Emily said her mic isn't working at the moment. Oh yeah, so she put in the chat. She's a postdoc at the Oklahoma City Zoo. I don't know if Teresa can join us, but we can move on if not. Yeah, so I did want to circle back to what Jane was mentioning about the difficulties with Nature's Notebook in some cases. And I think on our last state coordinators call, we talked about maybe having like a simplified version that you could give to some of your partners, and then you all would take those data sheets back and enter the data for them. So it's not something that we want to try to get into the practice of doing more widely, because that can be a lot of work to try to enter in by hand data sheets. But if you do have certain partners where you feel like that's the best fit, definitely talk to me about it. And I think, Jane, you and I can work together, and I can give you like a draft of what it might look like to just have like the simple flowers and fruits for some of the species that you guys are interested in. And we can try that out and see if that's like a better way to try to get them interested in Nature's Notebook.
Yeah, so if we can work on that, Erin, that would be great. And at least just let me try it is like whatever with a couple of sites and see if we can, and if it's a nightmare, then we'll skip it. But I think it would be worth giving a try too. So
yeah, we'll definitely try it out.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're also, I would say, trying to work with the Okies for Monarchs this spring too, to get a training going. It might be a virtual and maybe potential of an in-person, but we're still kind of working with those folks on that. But I'm hoping that we can work something out to have a more widespread training for people in Oklahoma too. And then that's great news, Kim, on the listening session funding. So yeah, Kim and Rob and Jake from the South Central Cask. And then we had a representative from was it the Santa Ana Pueblo? And Melanie Kirby, a group of us got together a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was months ago now, and had some discussions about the listening sessions that we had planned for New Mexico. The idea with those was to hear from particularly Pueblos in New Mexico about what their interest was in the project in general, and then also get some feedback on what species they would be interested in us recording data on as part of the project. And we got a lot of feedback in those discussions that it would be better to have an in-person listening session than trying to do something virtually. So Kim's been hard at work and trying to get some additional funding for that because we didn't have that included in our Time to Restore project. So thanks for working on that, and congratulations on getting that funding.
There's definitely a lot of support for that, and a couple other partners that are interested in supporting that and maybe joining in. But yeah, I was also really excited that Sharon was willing to help us structure it so that data sovereignty is kept on top, but also yeah, that we're proceeding in the best way forward. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think it sounds wonderful to have some extra help from the CASC on that, and it seems like it'll be a greater benefit beyond just this project too, and kind of like focusing some of your other work at BEMP too. So I think that it all sounds really good. And then, so any other, I guess, just general stuff that people wanted to add to the agenda? The main things I wanted to go over were the iNaturalist projects, and talking about whether we want to have like a single project for the region versus state projects. And I can show the one that Gina set up already. We're going to talk a little bit about the species list. And then I want to show the video that I've been working on with one of our undergraduate students, using Gina's photos and videos that she's been recording, and get some feedback on that. But any other things that we want to make sure we get to today? All right, so let me put this link in the chat. So Gina set up this Time to Restore project, which includes just the 8 original priority species. And right now, I don't think it has like a geographic scope, right, Gina? I don't know if you want to say anything else about how you set it up. I'm not super familiar with like all the different things you can do on there for a project, so.
Sure. So I set the geographical scope up, I believe, to just be the continental US and just those 8 species. So it's about it. I mean, it's any observation that can be validated as belonging to one of those 8 species that occurs anywhere in the US. So if you wanted to include geographical parameters, specific, subspecies, whatnot that you want to look at, you can do that, but figured leave it as broad as possible. So, we have as much data as is available.
Yeah. So we've been talking about adding additional species, especially for New Mexico. Louisiana needs some more species. Oklahoma, it sounds like it's pretty good with the list of 8 there. I don't know, there's a little bit of feedback. I don't know where that's coming from. And then Texas, obviously we haven't determined those priority species yet, so we'll be adding on there as well. So if anyone has experience with iNaturalist, or even if you don't, any opinions on whether it makes sense to have, continue to have a single project that's for the whole region, versus having split out like the Louisiana Time to Restore project or the Texas Time to Restore project.
I kind of like regional, just because we've got so many different ecosystems here. In a lot of ways, we're going to have more, like, just thinking about Texas, we have a lot in common with North Texas, and I don't know, but I'm not hard set on that. But just thinking about some of these ecosystems and plants, they're looking at state boundaries, they're kind of going where they want to go. So anyway, so that's just a thought I have, but I'm not digging in my heels about it, but just thinking about some of these things, you know what I mean? So
yeah, and it's actually not even just the region, I guess, because Gina set it up for anywhere in the continental US. So that could be useful too, because we might get some adjacent states on the north side of Oklahoma that have some useful data too. So.
Yeah.
Aaron, and I'll jump in here as well. I totally agree with Jane. As I've started to look at potential plant lists in Texas, given the size of the state and the varying ecoregions, I'm already seeing where you might be able to create a bit of gamification, if you will, if we were to create projects in there where each of the regions could then work to friendly compete against each other. It might be a nice, fun way. As I've looked at these plant lists, I've actually started looking at where we can create overlap so that they still are very much tied together. She's very right, correct in her assessment that many of the plants that are found in North Texas are very much found in much of Oklahoma. So we might actually see some regions. I've also, as I was looking at East Texas, there's a whole bunch of East Texas that spans right over in the Piney Woods into Louisiana. So we've got probably some drivers that push us to look at the ecoregions a bit stronger, and maybe they lend themselves to becoming subpart projects.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, and Emily also put in the chat that it's not too hard to separate out later by state if we have to. So, okay, well, that sounds like we are going to keep it as the project that Gina set up, which is great. We can add species to it then as we go. Gina, are you the only one that can do that, or can you make like other people like administrators or anything like that?
Yeah, I can definitely add other people as administrators. So if you let me know who needs or wants access, I can add y'all in.
Okay, great. And you would obviously need an iNaturalist account for that. I think most people probably have one that are on the call. I don't know, Kim, do you have one? I know that Jane and David do. Maybe you could make one. It's, yeah, very simple if you need to, but yeah, we can coordinate on that later. Okay, well, that's easy. So then let's talk about the species list next. Let me put this in here. So I think this was at our last quarterly call. I think we started to look at this kind of revisiting the time to restore list, and I invited people to add potentially new species to a fresh spreadsheet and then do another kind of round of voting. We didn't have too many people vote so far. I think it looks like Oklahoma, there were just a few species that people added, and those had quite a few votes relative to some of the other states. So I don't know, Jane, if you have any thoughts on those couple species that are on there. You know, I think if you feel like the 8 species that we have is good enough to start with, we could still potentially add these to iNaturalist to kind of expand out a little more there. And then with Nature's Notebook, we could be focused on the smaller list of 8.
I don't see a problem with adding a few more. I mean, I don't want the long list. I mean, because then it becomes so overwhelming. But I think adding a couple more, just that gives people more targets to choose from too, and so I think that's a good idea. My vote would be yes.
Great. Yeah. And I'm realizing that I didn't go through and look at which ones of these are on the Nature's Notebook list yet. I know a few of them are just from glancing through, but if we don't have, and some of them are actually at the genus level, which I don't know if we have for these particular genera, but I'll go through and look at that too, to see how easy it might be to add some of them. I know we have red maple because that's our top observed species, so that's easy. And then, okay, so then for Louisiana, I know, Gina, you've done a lot of work to add these on here, and that's quite a big list. So how are you feeling about, would you want to like demote some of the original list of 8 and have these, or do you want to just add to that original list of 8?
Well, I think it would probably be better, at least specifically for Louisiana, to demote a few of them because a couple of the species, particularly Asclepias speciosa, just you really don't find it here or anywhere in Louisiana that's super accessible for the people who would be participating, at least not as far as I know or can tell based on iNat records. So I would have to go through this kind of with a fine-tooth comb to see who I would demote and who I would not, but ultimately, for Louisiana, the only 2 species that are really common in the area on the priority list are buttonbush and echinacea. The rest we get, but not in any great quantities as far as, again, I'm aware and are accessible to observers. So yes, I think we should demote some, but maybe just 1 or 2 and replace with a couple of these for the Louisiana region.
Okay, cool. So yeah, in terms of how to handle this, I feel like when you're talking with local phenology programs, I think it's fine to give them like a bigger list and say, you can pick from any of these that you have available. I think in like bigger promotional efforts, if so David is planning to do a presentation at the Texas Master Naturalist annual meeting this fall, which is going to be a pretty big reach. I think for that kind of situation, like maybe you'd want to encourage people to, look at a narrower list, or if some of us are doing some like, I don't know, like a blog post or a newsletter, you might want to like make it a little bit smaller. But I think when you're working with a group of people where they're going to have their own leader, it's fine to leave it up to them and they can pick from their whatever they have available at their locations. So we could I'm thinking about the time to restore landing page. You know, we have the list of 8 there. We could replace that with like a bigger list and kind of like star some of them, and even have it maybe like a table with the different states, and then indicate if it's like a species that we're really focused on, one that might be more common. So does that sound like it might be helpful to kind of have that like all presented that way? Or would you rather just kind of like know what your state species are and be working on your own promotion in a different way?
I kind of like the latter idea. And also
Okay.
something that just occurred to me that is not 100% on topic, I'm sorry, is that I kind of like the suggestion to have just Liatris as a genus included, because one thing I found as I've gone through and tried to document is that we have dozens of local species and you really need a key to be able to tell which one you're looking at a lot of the time, and they grow close to each other in the same habitat. So I think that, you know, for all the seasoned botany folks among us, it might be helpful to drop that to genus.
Okay. Yeah, we've done that for other plant species. So yeah, I think that's something we can do. I will talk to Ellen Denny, our species protocol person, about that.
Erin or
Uh-huh.
Jane or anyone else who knows what's going on this species priority list, can you just briefly explain to me what you guys are working on with this?
Yeah,
Because I'm way
sure.
behind the mark
That
here.
might be
And
helpful.
that
Yes,
way I
okay.
kind of know what you guys are doing.
Yes.
Thanks.
So we are trying to collect information about the flowering and the seed timing for these species. And the idea is these are species that are important or identified by people working in pollinator restoration as plants that they think are important for pollinators. And so we want to understand ultimately whether these species are going to be shifting under future climate change conditions, and if so, by how much and what direction. So to do that, we need to have more data than we have now on when the species are flowering, when they're going to seed, and then we can make models to kind of figure out what are the climate cues that are triggering those things. So is it, you know, temperature? Is it precipitation that's causing a plant to flower? If we know that it's like tied to temperature, then we can use climate projections to look forward and say, well, we know it's going to be 5 degrees hotter in this location. We can expect that flowering is going to shift and be, you know, 5 or 10 days earlier. And so that just kind of helps in understanding, you know, if you picture like a flowering calendar or bloom calendar, how that's going to shift in 10 years or 20 years. And it might inform what species you would select to plant if you're trying to support pollinators at a certain time of the year. So we're offering 2 different methods for the data collection. So we've been talking about iNaturalist, which is great. You know, there's a ton of people that use it and it's really simple. You can take a photo if you're not sure about what species is, and it has like capabilities to help you identify that. So that is something we're promoting. And then Nature's Notebook involves doing repeated observations on the same individual plants. And so that the benefit of that is we can more easily capture like the onset, when flowering started or when ripe seeds started, and then the duration of that, and also like the peak in timing, like when were the most flowers, the most nectar available. So we're trying to get both of those data types. So that's really the objective with the narrowing down of the priority species, is like, we don't want to get like just a little bit of data on a lot of species. It's much more helpful for the modeling work if we can like have a lot of data on a few species. So that's why we're trying to narrow it down, but it's been difficult to try to figure out, you know, what's the best short list of species. So it seems like this is going to help us kind of do both. We'll have, you know, some species where we might have a lot of data, and then we'll have a bunch more with a little bit, but eventually, hopefully we'll have enough data where we can do the models and kind of start to look at those connections with climate and then be able to project forward. Thanks for asking that. Should have
That
started with
helps a
that.
lot. That helps a lot. Thank
Yeah.
you.
One small thing to add to that too is that
Yeah.
part of the challenge in selecting the priority species and kind of looking at what to exclude or add is figuring out which species are accessible to the people who are going to be observing. So it's not just which species are the most important for pollinators during critical nectar periods. It's, can people get there? Are they in, you know, areas where a lot of people volunteer or work, or, you know.
Yeah, thanks, Gina. And also thinking forward to like, if we're going to be, telling people these are species you could plant to support pollinators, if they can't even find those plants or find the seeds, that's not very useful either. So things that are a little bit more common or accessible are probably better too.
Yeah, to tag on to that, what Gina just said, the other thing is trying to stretch that season out, right? Try to make sure that you've got stuff in the spring, the fall, the winter to keep the whole energy of the effort going, I think is kind of critical as well. We've also got this issue of whether those plants are easily propagated and cared for or observed in local gardens. So I think we've got a couple of challenges we need to keep mindful of.
Right. And when I was going through and adding species to the spreadsheet that Erin just sent, that's kind of something I had in mind as far as spreading out, when these different plants are blooming and kind of capturing the entire season. So
Yeah, definitely. So we have that column on there for the general bloom time to help you kind of pick out. So if you're working with a new, like a program that wants to do this in organization, you can use this to kind of pick something during different times of the year, like David was saying, to keep people interested. And I don't know if it's worth adding another column on here about like some sort of thing related to availability, or like how common the plant is, but we could do that as well. Or anything else you think we should add on there. Feel free to suggest those things and we can keep updating the spreadsheet.
I think maybe common around densely populated areas might be helpful. I know not everybody here necessarily lives in one, but with, an eye towards getting the maximal amount of data collection going. So maybe not necessarily something just, for example, in my case, I have to drive like 2-3 hours whenever I want to find the liatris that we're looking at. There are not a lot of people where those species occur in Louisiana.
Yeah. Okay, anything else on the species list? I think
Erin, do we know?
Yeah.
Just quick question. The issue of using genus versus a specific species, do we know what that does to the overall data? Does it make much difference? Because I think, when we start looking across ecoregions, we're going to have a whole bunch of genus that spreads quite a distance. And so to me, that's particularly appealing because it releases us to start looking at much larger areas. And I just wondered what that might do to the data or the project.
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the first round of data analysis that we did last year, Alyssa ended up going outside of the region to pull in data from pretty much all across the country where we had those species. So I would think if we're going to go with that same method, bringing in like even additional species within a genus might make it even more variable. And I would think that that would be not as good for the data analysis because you'd have like species that potentially are in really different areas that are behaving really differently that are being analyzed the same way. But there might be ways to get around that if we have, a combination of some data that are at the genus level and others that are at the species level. Maybe there's a way to parse that out somehow. So yeah, I would say if it's a limitation in getting people to collect data, we should try to broaden out to genus level. But in the cases where we can keep it at species level, I think that's ideal for the data collection. I don't know if anyone else has any other thoughts on that, but I guess we don't know yet how that'll impact the data. And then we didn't talk about New Mexico yet. So New Mexico has a few species on here, a globe mallow and a liatris, I guess liatris at the genus level, and then tufted evening primrose. So I don't know, Kim, were you the one that added those or did someone else add those for New Mexico?
No, and I'm curious as to who did add the globe mallow. But no.
Are those species that you've seen more commonly than the original 8, or are they still hard to find? In
the globe mallow is definitely common, especially at drier sites.
Okay.
But the liatris, no.
Okay.
Not at our sites.
Yeah, so it could be worth considering the globe mallow, at least for Nature's Notebook. I don't think we have that particular species, but I'd have to check. And it's something that we could add, you know, any species that we don't have, we could add next year for monitoring, but we wouldn't be able to do it right away. But we could add these to the iNaturalist to kind of broaden that out. So maybe we can do that.
And there are similar species. Yeah, I mean, if like the Solidago, especially at the genus level, and Baccharis, I mean, we have two different species, but like depending on how many of these that we're willing to shift to genus level.
Yeah, maybe we can at the NPN talk a little bit more about the implications of that. We can talk to Erin Zilstra, who's doing the data analysis, about her thoughts on doing that. And I am just looking at the notes now about the globe mallow. It says it maybe is not a nectar species. It's recommended for mine reclamation. So I don't know if we want to still consider that one. I know here globe mallows are really good for pollinators, but mostly bees. All right, anything else on the species? Okay. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about is this video that we have put together as kind of a demonstration. So one of the needs that we kind of identified for training resources was more resources about seeds and how to identify what seeds look like and when they're ripe. So we're particularly interested in ripe seeds for this project because that's tied to when you would go out to collect them. And so it's kind of hard for some species to know when they're actually ripe versus unripe. And within Nature's Notebook, we actually have, we call them species-specific phenophase definitions. They're like details about, like, for this species, you know it's ripe because it turns this color. And so we have that information in text, but it's really helpful to be able to see visuals of that. We do have some like photo guide resources where it's basically like a single picture of each phenophase. But Jean has actually been doing some videos because we realized for ripe seeds, often it's a lot about the texture and kind of like what it looks like when you're touching it. So I wanted to show, let me see if this will work. I have a video. It's really short. We wanted to keep these like very short. This one is for buttonbush and it doesn't have any sound, so I won't worry about that. But let me see if I can play this. And hopefully it won't be too laggy for you, but this is the little video we put together. So it's focused on flowering and fruiting for common buttonbush. And this text is all from the definition that we have. And then this is a little quiz that kind of asks you, this is what the data sheet would look like in Nature's Notebook. I don't know if my window is hiding it. It's over here. So yes, and thanks to Gina for taking all the photos and the video. So we're thinking that if this seems like a helpful resource, we would make more of these. We can't incorporate them into the Nature's Notebook app. We can put them on the Time to Restore website. And we were thinking, actually talking at the last meeting we had with the state coordinators, that you probably wouldn't easily be able to look at it on your phone in the field. So probably the best use for this would be in a training setting where you're maybe doing a train the trainers workshop, or you're doing a direct training with observers, and you're kind of walking them through what this looks like. And so you could play the ones for the species that you're focused on at your location. So any feedback on this? Do you want me to play it again? I know it's short. Maybe I'll just start it going again. But any, general thoughts, or do you feel like there's a particular use case? Is there anything we could do to improve this?
I like it.
like-
I think y'all did a great job with the resources at hand. I think it might be good to have one of these for each of the priority species we select, and then kind of add on to that with anything where there are particularly difficult judgment calls to make when you're collecting data.
Mhm.
I'm gonna say, you know, coming in as a novice, and I'm not a botanist, not even close to being a botanist or a plant person, this is very, very helpful
Great,
for someone like me. So, yeah, I like it.
cool.
Yeah, Aaron, I echo that. I also think the brevity of them makes them especially useful. You know, it's very easy to digest this, so I think it's a great tool.
Awesome.
Now I'm
Yeah.
thinking I have to go start doing these for the species that we have on our phenology project. It's a shame that most of this stuff is, you know, 35, 40 feet up in trees where you can't see it.
You just need to get a drone.
We talked about that.
Yeah. So we didn't really focus too much on the flowers in terms of the video, but we felt like with the flowers, it's a little easier to just see it in a photo. But does anyone think it would be good to have like a video? Maybe it will change our mind if it comes to different species, but a video of the flowers in addition to the fruits?
I really like the video. I think the more species that we can have that for, the more it's going to help people. So I don't think we can have enough of those videos, truthfully.
Okay.
I also think Rob's comment about like when they're really high up, having a video that kind of shows what this looks like from the ground if you don't have binoculars, and then maybe
yeah.
zooming in and just giving folks kind of a, like, if you can see it, this is what you're looking for, but having that perspective of you can still make those identifications when it's more distant.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
a
you
great
just need the
point.
confidence of the video. Yeah, like that
Yeah.
confirmation. Oh yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, is there anything about the color? Like, is it slightly different? Something that you could see from far away? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know one of the things that I personally have the most trouble with when I'm doing observations is being able to tell whether there's fruit on oak trees or not. Like, oh my God, you know, at the beginning of the season. So I always forget my binoculars and I'm always mad. But yeah, I agree that that might be helpful.
Aaron, it occurred to me also that it may be particularly useful for use, you know, if you're going to the same plant or grouping of plants on a regular basis, this shouldn't be that difficult. But if we're trying to use the tools so that they go and they observe it with iNat, maybe knowing where that plant's going to be in the landscape might be particularly helpful. So maybe that's a lead up video, as you know, a button bush is likely going to be near water, likely going to be at mid height, not a low plant. I'm just trying to think of tools. You know, if we're thinking of it as a training tool, it might be especially helpful if we were able to impart a lot of identification ability without actually having to tell them about it. Maybe that's a bit of a lead up to that plant so they know where they're going and where they might see fruit, where they might see flowers. Just a thought.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so I don't know if, I guess we haven't made any phenophase photo guides yet for this project, but let me show you. I guess this is not one that's filled out. I'm trying to find an example of one where it's filled in already. Okay, hold on. So so the phenophase photo guides I mentioned, they have just a single photo for each of the phenophases, like ripe fruits or fruits. But there's also a front of the side of the double-sided sheet, and it has some more of that kind of information, like about identification of the species and characteristics. So I think we could make use of that for some of that information, kind of like highlighting, yeah, where you might find it. That would be, I don't know if it's, I guess you could use the phenophase photo guides for iNaturalist too, because that kind of pinpoints like which of the stages we're interested in. And so they could still capture that through iNat with their photos. I don't know if I guess I have one on the website. Let me hold on just a sec. Look at one of the Nectar Connectors ones. We have one. Okay, so I'm going to show one of the ones for one of our milkweeds that is here in Arizona. So this is part of our desert refuge project, but so the front is why observe and then tips for identification. So I could see using those sections to kind of include more of either the growth characteristics or like where you might find it. And we could, could do a smaller section for this and then more for the tips for identification. And then it's meant to have a picture that's kind of from looking at the full plant to show you what it looks like. And then the back is showing you the phenophases and what they look like. So we could definitely make use of this template and make more of these too. Any other thoughts on the video? We also were wondering about for the questions that we have about intensity. So that's things like how many flowers or flower buds and what % of open flowers. Maybe a video might help with that as well. So there's some tips on how to kind of estimate numbers of flower structures and how to kind of average across for the percentage of open flowers in our observer certification course. But we could do a short video of that as well that could be used in trainings. So I think Gina's working on like finding a good candidate for a plant where she could do that and kind of show what the whole plant looks like, zoom in and show, this is an inflorescence. You can tell that, 50% of the flowers are open, and then zoom back out and kind of like, look at different ones and then get an average of those. Rob hates estimating intensity. Yeah, I'm sure for those big trees, it's really difficult.
We're almost to buttonbush bloom here. We've got
Okay.
flower buds popping up all over the place, so I'm probably going to hold out for that since it might be immediately useful priority
Great.
species.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, they're out here, so yeah, it's already started here on the Gulf Coast.
Okay. So that is in the works as well. So hopefully more training resources coming. So Gina is doing a wonderful job taking her photos and videos in Louisiana, but obviously she doesn't have access to all the species. So we definitely welcome anyone who likes to take pictures to do more of these photographs and videos for the species that you have. So like Jane, I don't know if you guys, do you have any photographers in your group that would like doing that?
Yeah, we have tons and tons and tons of photos. And also, I can't remember, Erin, did I send you our tap seed collecting guide? Did I send you that we did?
So.
Amy Bouteau from Beberbarium and OU. We've got this for 44 species, and it's a really nice one-pager that shows when the fruits are ripe and whatever, and what the plants are useful for. So I'll send you a link to that.
Okay.
We're planning on adding more, but it might be useful just, and we have some of the priority species are on there too. So I'll send you that. But yeah, we've got all the photos I think you would ever need, because anyway, we all take them, and Brandon in particular has tons and tons and tons of photos. So
awesome. Yeah, if he's willing to do any little short videos like Gina did for the button bush, that would be great to kind of just show if you can get the comparison, or we could take 2 different videos if you can't find the same thing or different things on the same plant. Then you could take one first, and then a couple of weeks later do the grapefruit one. Okay, I will do that. Where's the link? If I'm going to send him to that video? Yeah, so I don't have it up anywhere, but let me put it in. There's a Google Drive folder that has Gina's videos. And so you could have him look in there for the video I just showed and then post any videos in there too.
Okay, I'll do that.
Let me grab that link.
Erin, I just thought of something. Have we thought about the structure that we might want these videos to generally comply with in terms of amount of time that elapses in the buildup versus the, by the time you're at seed versus flower, so on and so forth, so that when we use them, they all seem to fit together in a kind of somewhat uniform way? Have you thought about that?
Not yet. I mean, really, the one we
Yeah.
made was like for the purpose of getting feedback and on that very thing. So yeah, I'll put this video in this folder. I'll send it around in the follow-up email. And then definitely like if you have feedback about that kind of thing, like it's not really long enough. I didn't have time to read the text or make it shorter. Yeah, I definitely want to standardize them. But this one is really for getting feedback. So
Yeah.
it's not set
And I
yet.
think it works perfectly, to be honest with you. It's almost the right amount of time for, that you could expect to have an observer pay attention. So it's especially helpful. So I'm almost thinking we may have created that tool and we just need to measure out what it looks like in terms of structure.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. And also I feel like if you're in a training, you could pause it, if you really wanted to like point out certain things. So yeah, I think you're right that the shortest we can make it is probably good, especially for sharing on like social media and stuff if we want to use them for that purpose. Yeah, and then I don't know, I guess Kim, you're still working on the species list for New Mexico, but if you guys happen to, if you have any species that are fairly common from that list, and you can get any videos for New Mexico species, that would be great too.
I'll ask someone else who has better skills.
So we have a few minutes left. Is there anything else anyone wanted to talk about? I don't know, David, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you want to share anything about plans that you have in the works for Texas? We've kind of like been thinking a lot about how we're going to do the priority species for Texas, which is so big.
Yeah. The scale and size of the state makes it, a daunting task in and of itself. But some of the big ones, y'all, and you probably, we have some blessings here. We have, 15,000 certified master naturalists across the state. 213 of our 254 counties are represented by a master naturalist chapter. We have another 4,000 members of the Native Plant Society of Texas. And there's about 50 chapters of them, mostly around urban centers. So we've got some blessing in that we've got some people who are volunteer minded and educated about natural resources and native plants and pollinators in particular. So I think those are going to be, you're going to see, in the next few months, you're going to start to see us identifying ways to get in front of them and get them excited about what we're doing, and then start to set up the data collection sites, hopefully across the state. I envision that we've got probably 3 big areas of the state that we would like to focus in on because that's where we have largest population clusters. But I also, as I've been thinking about how we do this, I've been trying to think about how we connect to the other states in this effort. I don't want to have a Piney Woods hole because that connects us to Louisiana. Don't want to have a hole on West Texas side because that's the one connection that really hits home when we're going towards New Mexico. So all of those kind of weigh in on this, but it'll largely be driven by where we can get people interested, excited, and active. And so we'll be trying to do that in the coming months.
Great, thank you. All right, any last things before we say goodbye? All right, so I will send around an email with the links to the video for viewing the one that I just shared, and then also uploading any other videos you happen to be able to take for species in your state. We'll make some updates on the Time to Restore landing page about the species list, and I can share that around for some feedback as well. I will talk to a couple people about adding species at the genus level for some cases. And I think that is it on my short list. Oh, and I'll, Jane, you and I will work on a short simplified version of the data sheet too, that we can share around. Right. Well, thanks so much everybody for coming, and we will check in again in a couple months.
Thanks, y'all. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for the warm welcome. Look forward to working with you in the future.
Thanks, David. Bye.